Hello friends. Today I want to talk about my process for line editing and copy editing specifically because I just finished doing a very rigorous line edit of the potion dealers, and I went through and kind of made a list of all the things that I looked for while I was doing this edit. Now, as always, if you are not experienced in line editing, and like line editing and copy editing are often used somewhat interchangeably, but generally copy editing is like grammar, Chicago Manual of Style type stuff, making sure your commas are in the right place and like fixing little consistencies. Line editing is a little more like doing that final look over your prose and making sure that like your descriptions are vivid enough and it's a little more like honing the writing style at the very end versus like the more technical aspects of copy editing generally. I have had 5 manuscripts that were traditionally published, so they were all professionally copy edited along with getting line edits from my editor. So I've been through a lot of professional editing processes and I learned a lot doing that. If you're more new to line editing, the first thing I always recommend is self-editing for fiction writers, the book. You can even find it in a link in my description. If you go to the link for my books, it will take you to my like Amazon affiliate page where I have a list of the books I recommend for aspiring writers, and that is one that I always recommend. Some of the things they talk about in self-editing for fiction writers, I am not really worried about in this video because I've kind of gotten past some of them. I recommend you read that first if you're new to line and copy editing. But this is like, even if you have line edited and copy edited a gajillion books, these are the mistakes I continue to keep making, the things I still look for when I'm doing my line edits and copy edits. I do these edits all throughout the writing process. Like as I'm kind of writing the book, I'll go back and read what I just wrote and I'll tweak anything I can think of at the time. But then when I get to the end, I will do at least one full pass on a printed copy. And in this case, I did 2 full passes on a printed copy because I really wanted to make sure that I had all the world details and everything consistent. I'd moved a couple scenes around, so went through a lot of edits. So let's talk about some of the things that I looked for. Number 1, of course, is words that don't really do anything. A lot of them are adverbs, and then they're also just kind of some like little meaningless phrases that tend to just kind of creep in no matter how hard you try. I made a list of all the ones that I ended up deleting from the book at some point or other. They were still, really, as well, certainly, very, literally, about the, some of them, just, barely, probably, for one, for another, not exactly, even, quickly, quite. He had to hope that, to tell you the truth. He even said that, to be honest, by my reckoning, having no better option, it might be, for no logical reason, and in any capacity. So these are like all those little words that pop up that like, they just don't really do anything. They just kind of come up while you're writing, and then you have to go back and pair them all out. A couple of others that I wrote down, like to get into a little more specific examples. For the first time, a sickly wave of regret poured over him. I cut the sickly because it's like a wave of regret. That obviously doesn't feel good. I don't need to say that it's sickly. Had flung themselves violently to the ground. Well, flinging yourself to the ground already sounds like it's got a lot of oomph already. Don't really need to say violently. At one point, George says, "She couldn't marry a Santaroon, especially one like me who isn't even good at the job." I cut the like me because it's already implied if he's saying, especially one who isn't very good at the job. We can tell that George means himself when he's saying that. Number 2, another one that will always pop up no matter how hard you try to avoid it, repeated words and phrases, such as, "Are you going to find this guy's house on your own? It looks pretty clear around here, but you still got to find the house." Well, we've got find the house twice. Don't really need that. You're also looking for repetitive phrasing that's too close together. Like at one point I have a paragraph that starts with a prickle of uncertainty, and then the next paragraph starts with a roar of excitement. The phrasing is too similar and too specific for how close they are together, so I changed one of them. Number 3, you want to try to read your whole book in one go, because then you will notice words that you may have used too often in this particular book. Like I had Alfred grimace 12 times in the book, which felt like a little too many grimaces. I also use the word cozy too often. I am the cozy creative, so I guess that's on brand, but yeah, I cut out a couple of cozies. Number four, concepts that you repeat too often. When you're reading the whole book at once, you'll also notice if you kind of hammer too hard on certain points where it's like, yeah, we know. Like when I read it all at once, I realized that I had Livonia thinking about how her parents fell madly in love and then got killed because they were doing some kind of crazy, adventurous, ambitious stuff together. And her family has always kind of implied that if her mother hadn't gone off to university and fallen in love, she would still be alive. So that's kind of hung over her head, and it's worth thinking about once, twice. Is it worth thinking about like 7 times? Probably not. Number 5, I'm looking for clarity of grammar, and when I had books copy edited, one thing that I really noticed that I do is very common is just, I'm not like enough of a grammar expert to tell you what this is called, but it's like when you say one person's name and then you mention another person and then you go back to like he. So for example, Det looked ever so briefly troubled. I never met your mother, and she's looking for me, Livonia said. That makes it sound like her mother is looking for her, but she's actually referring to someone that was brought up a couple sentences ago. So I had to change that, put in that person's name instead because it had gotten unclear. Another example here, she came over beside him, snuggling into the blanket at the corner of the couch. In this case, it doesn't really matter. It works either way, but the way that I meant it was that she came out swathed in a blanket and she snuggled into the blanket while sitting at the corner of the couch. But it sounds like the blanket was at the corner of the couch and she snuggled into it there. So while it doesn't really matter that much in the context of that sentence, it is a little weird because it does say she took her blanket out of bed and then came out and then the blanket's suddenly at the corner of the couch. Those are like the weird little things that you got to make sure that you didn't kind of attribute the wrong person to an action or the wrong object. I always catch a couple of those in like every book. While we're in the middle of all this, have any of you been feeling generally like you would like to level up your content? Are you struggling with getting your writing to where you want it to be? I am so excited to tell you about a 2-week virtual authors conference that is coming up. It's called IncorsCon, and it is specifically geared toward helping indie authors succeed. It starts on June 7th. They're kicking off the digital launch of the conference. And with your digital pass, you'll get the entire curriculum of courses for this year, with topics from showing emotion effectively for characters to advanced TikTok for authors. I could use that one. So it's covering a wide range. In addition to these 24 classes, taught by bestsellers and industry experts, you'll get invited to a ton of interactive online events like Q&As with best-selling authors, writing sprint sessions, networking events, author roundtables, and a lot more. I actually said yes to this because I wanted access to the panels myself so that I could learn some new things, because that process never stops and they really do have a good lineup of speakers. It's really easy to register, and I have a $50 off coupon for you guys. So you'll get the entire curriculum and all the events for only $199, which I think is really a good price for all that you get out of this. Sometimes it is so great to have just like a lot of different people's perspectives kind of cram your head all at once. It can be extremely inspiring. I've always come away from any conference with like just fired up, ready to go, because I've heard so many different people's takes on writing and marketing, and it always just makes me feel like there's always somebody who has something that resonates. So if you want to check out IncorsCon, make sure to use my code CozyCreative25. So my 6th tip of things I look for in line editing is clunky extra phrasing. This is going beyond just words that get overused by like almost everybody all the time. This is just kind of analyzing every single sentence in the book and making sure that every word is pulling its weight and every word needs to be there. So here's some examples of things that I cut. But she also wanted to grow her roots and branches in new directions. She wanted to show Alfred and George she could make things happen. I cut the line about wanting to grow her roots and branches in new directions. Is it like kind of a pretty phrase? Sure. Is it like spectacular? Nah. Does it need to be there? No. Was she enchanting him a little? She was sending up all his alarm bells with good reason, if she was who he guessed her to be. But he did want to find out a little more. That last sentence, like, it does nothing. It's so much more intriguing to end that sentence on, with good reason, if she was who he guessed her to be. Then I just throw in that, he wanted to find out a little more. No, just cut that. There was the phrase, a slow smile tugged at him. That's kind of bordering on stupid, frankly. And those are the kind of sentences that sometimes pop up when, like, you're writing dialogue and you get, like, a little neurotic that the dialogue doesn't stand on its own. So you start, like, adding in, like, you know, too many grimaces and slow smiles and, you know, crossing arms and winks. Like, it can get stupid. Usually when I'm editing, I can go and I compare down some of the actions I added into the dialogue scenes. I also have a kind of habit of doing like repetitive sentences where, like, it's like I'm kind of feeling my way toward where I want to go, so I kind of do this repetitive sentence thing, like, Livonia's skin broke into goosebumps. She hadn't expected to feel this way. She hadn't expected the world to feel so big, so grand, so strange. Well, she hadn't expected to feel this way, that does nothing. That could just be cut. It's like I was just kind of writing that as I was fumbling toward more specific feelings from her. Number 7, looking for passive voice. This particular phrase is like, I had a use of was getting from instead of got from. There's a lot of was blanking instead of blanked. And sometimes sentences that start with there was. I do like the there was phrasing sometimes because I feel like it sets a certain level of like a fairy tale mood or like it's a little old fashioned. It has a certain vibe to me, so I don't always cut it. But sometimes it doesn't add anything. So just be sparing with there was a or those phrases. And you almost never need the was doing instead of did. Then there's number 8, removing unnecessary information from the scene. When I'm writing, I'm often just kind of seeing things play out like as if I'm not the one creating them. I'm just watching them happen and I'm recording what I'm seeing, which will lead to sentences like this, where it says, they were carrying clubs, swords, and other assorted weapons. In my head, it's like, okay, they got all kinds of weapons. They've got magical staffs and knives, and everybody brought a different weapon. But even though that's what I saw, when I went back to edit it, I thought, you know, I could just say they're carrying clubs and swords. Other assorted weapons just kind of sounds like, do we need that information? Alternately, I could have gone back in and said carrying clubs, swords, magical staffs, and knives. That's up to you, what you're trying to evoke here. But another type of unnecessary information that can pop up is just like kind of, again, sort of repetitive, like, this was the first necromancer she passed on the street. Well, we know she's on the street, so we could presume that she passed the necromancer on the street. So that can just get cut. Number 9, unneeded dialogue beats. Kind of like you can have too many people grimacing and slow smiling just to kind of pace the dialogue. Sometimes I catch myself adding unnecessary dialogue. Sometimes it's just to break up one character's dialogue. So I'll have somebody just be like, okay, really? Oh. And then other times I'll add in like a yes, and then they'll answer. You know, like, you don't really need that. You don't really need them to say like yes or hello, I'm so-and-so. You could probably just cut the hello, just have them introduce themselves, unless you're particularly trying to have a mood of like a certain formality or lack thereof. Like, you know, hey, I'm George has a different vibe than I'm George, or hello, I'm George. So, you know, it's worth thinking about whether it fits the character and the situation, but sometimes I just have like a random, that doesn't need to be there. Is this very nitpicky? Yes, it is. But every book I cut thousands of words that just don't need to be there, and while each one doesn't really matter, it's not really going to trip anybody up. I do think that collectively, if you really take the time to cut out all these little extraneous bits, it does give the book better flow as a whole. Number 10, I look for little moments where characters are just not quite acting in character. That line editing process is a good chance to really review every little moment. You're checking not only for extraneous words in the most minute way, but also making sure that your characters really are consistent. Like at one point, Alfred and his father are having a conversation, and Alfred starts to get the vibe that his father really wants him to grovel and apologize. But in the process of the conversation, his father says, "I'm sorry." And as I was reviewing that, I thought, his father isn't going to say "I'm sorry," not even in a manipulative way. He is not going to say those words to Alfred. He wants to hear those words, not say them himself. So I cut that. Number 11, consistency errors. This is your last chance to catch all those little things that are like too tiny to really pay attention to, but you can try to notice them now, such as at one point, Alfred is wearing a sweater and then he's removing his jacket. I try to find all those little moments, just like little mistakes in a movie, and see if you can catch them. Number 12, unnecessary movement, or well, that's what we're going to call it, although my example here is it's not quite a movement, but there is a point where Alfred goes to talk to his father in his office, and before he goes inside, he goes, "Wait outside a sec," Alfred told George. Well, there really was no reason for George to even follow him to the office. Like, George never comes in, George never has conversation with them, George goes and hangs out in Alfred's bedroom anyway, so that didn't need to be there. There's no point in having George present. And generally this takes the form of just like, he opened the door, he pulled out a chair, he sat down in the chair. I just read, in fact, an indie published book that it just had too much of people like pulling out chairs and passing the salt and opening doors and walking from A to B. A lot of times you don't need a lot of that. And it's not just an amateur mistake, it's something that can stick with you for a while. Number 13, this is your place to make more vivid descriptions. Sometimes when you're in the thick of writing a draft, you might feel like you've made every description good as you go, if you're that kind of writer, but in line edits you will often catch yourself being sloppy here and there. Like, at one point I said, "They checked into a beautiful hotel." Well, what does that even mean? What makes it beautiful? It's also from Alfred's point of view, and he's blind, so what does that even mean to him? I had to stop and review, like, would this hotel actually even be beautiful? Because they're not really in, like, the most highbrow city. And if it was beautiful, what criteria is Alfred assessing the beauty of the hotel based on? Like, he was earlier in, like, an oceanfront balcony hotel with, like, beautiful ocean breezes, and it was spacious. Like, I can see him thinking that was beautiful, but I don't know if this hotel is beautiful. So we're just not even gonna go there. Number 14, this is also your chance to add in fun stuff. You're taking out stuff that does absolutely nothing, but that final draft is often where I add in little fun extra things. Just a short little bit of banter or dialogue, description of something that adds a little depth to the book. Like, I know when I was writing The Broken Queen, I'm pretty sure that in there still, there's a scene where Atora and Tasha are like kind of gabbing about what their astrology signs are. That was when I added in like the line editing phase, because I felt like they needed to have like some fun friend banter that wasn't just talking about like the guys they like and the stress parts of the kingdom. They needed to have like some fun conversation like I would have with my friends. So that's a good chance to like put in those little bits of character development that you don't have to get the plot moving, but they really add a lot. And number 15, this is your last chance to just fix anything that nags at you. Sometimes there's a paragraph or something, or a little bit of a book that like you've read the book like 4 times through already. And every time this paragraph gives you a little bit of pause, but you kind of look at it and go, yeah, but like it's fine. It seems fine. I don't know why it's bothering me. Well, now is your final moment to go, yeah, but maybe it could be better. There's a chapter in The Potion Dealers where they talk to Velsa and Grau, and this chapter just kept bothering me. It felt a little disconnected. The conversation didn't have a very good flow, but like it worked. It was fine. So in the final draft, I changed around this conversation. I still feel like it could be better, but you know, it's better than it was at least. Sometimes you do have those scenes that like, they just don't fully click the way you want them to, but they work. And I think it's okay to sometimes just let that go. I'm not like peak perfectionist, because if you are a peak perfectionist, you will not finish things. But nevertheless, when I'm in the final draft, if something is bothering me, I try to just rewrite it and see if I can punch it up a little. Particularly if it trips me up every time I read it. So that was everything that I tweaked in my final draft, pretty much. It took me quite a long time. This is not a quick process to do an intense line edit like this. But I do think that if you have the time to really review every little sentence like that, it is worth it. It does really give things a polish. Still, just one more thought. I will say that this kind of editing, it's kind of like peeling an onion. The more writing experience you have, the more you get deeper into the layers of line editing, and that's okay. If you're a little bit more of a new writer, you're not going to manage all of these things along with everything that's mentioned in self-editing for fiction writers. You kind of got to master it in layers, and that's okay. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any other tips for line editing or any comments on your line editing or copy editing process that I didn't mention, feel free to share your knowledge as well. If you're interested in Incor's Con, you want to level up your writing, make sure to check out the link in the description for that and use my code, CozyCreative25. And if you're new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove. I'm a fantasy author, and I've been making my living as a writer since 2009. I have both a Patreon and a Substack that have free content on both, and a paid tier that gets you access to bonus videos every month that you guys vote on, and my Discord. I'd love to see you there. And if you'd like to read any of my books, there's a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!